Welcome in, everyone, to the Crowded Booth here on a Wednesday evening. We are inching closer and closer to the start of spring football. And that being said, it's nearly time for us to wrap up our tier rankings and rankings in general. We have gone through the head coaches, we have gone through the quarterbacks, and now we will unveil our tier rankings, both of the SEC and the ACC. Tonight's the SEC, tomorrow night will be the ACC. So without further ado, welcome in, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's talk SEC football and the tier rankings heading into 2025 on tonight's episode of the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Well, welcome in, everyone, to the Crowded Booth here on a Wednesday evening. And like I said in the open, we are getting closer and closer to the start of spring football. I know a lot of teams, some teams have started, other teams will start this week, next week, and then the coming weeks. And building up to what everyone cares about is the spring games, which,
what's a spring game?
What's a spring game? A spring event. Should we call it that? A spring fling, some type of event. I don't know. Like, what do you even call these? OTAs. Let's just give it some type of OTA.
But it's not optional.
But it's not. That's true. It's not optional. Well, I guess technically it is. You could just not come, but you could.
PTAs, private team activities.
There you go. Private team activities, and you can technically opt out of them if you'd like and enter the portal afterwards, if that's your cup of tea.
Yeah.
But spring practice is obviously kicking up. It's a time for development. It's a time for installation. Well, obviously, some teams in the SEC have new play callers, new quarterbacks. When we talked about this the other week, fellas, that this is a conference that has what we think talent on paper in terms of the quarterback position, but in terms of the proven ability at that spot or at that team or at that place, there's not a lot of that. So it's going to be some intrigue to monitor here over the next month or so. But before we get started, we're now a week into the regular season for the Lions of St. Luke. So what's the latest status? You guys had a scrimmage game, I heard, but it sounds like some players are on the shelf, and that's not what you want to hear this early in the season.
Forget the scrimmage game. Ask them about Monday night's game. That's the one you need to talk about.
Well, LaGrange Academy developmental program. Probably the best way to put it. 21-0 blanking on Monday night. Bats were alive.
The Bats were alive. I like that.
Now the team is dropping like flies.
Brutal.
I didn't know a 14-year-old could strain his UCL, but here you go.
Ralph, you didn't. Did you make it out to the scrimmage yesterday?
I did.
What were your thoughts as a innocent bystander of the?
Well, I'll say this. They had one or two guys calling balls and strike that actually did pretty good. One being on this show, in the red hoodie right now. The other one, who was not calling balls and strikes very well, is probably not here with us, but he is watching the show right now. Per his dad, it was not very pretty. That's what he said. Will did miss a very obvious safe call at first base, which he did tell the coach he did not see he missed a tag. But for Will's sake, he was out by 20 feet. The guy just completely missed a tag. It was quite. I mean, it's a scrimmage game. No one really cares. Some teams hanging the banner though. That's all I'm going to say.
So you had someone hang the banner.
The term "belt to ass" was used post game.
Oh, this was a family show.
It is, but sometimes in some terms it needs to be said when middle school players are walking out there to each other and hitting each other in the backside with a belt after a scrimmage game.
Wait, the other team brought a belt?
No, it was an arm sleeve.
They use it as a belt, though.
What was the final score of the scrimmage game?
Do you know? Like 6-3, 6-4.
So it wasn't BTA.
No, it was
It
14,000
was definitely
yards.
not. The final score was. Oh, it's not even on here.
Because no one kept score.
That's
I think it
brutal.
was 8-3. I think it was 8-3 or 10. Gavin says 10-4.
Well, 10-4. Well, you know what? It's
Look, Reggie wants to know the kids joining again. I hope not. I hope never again.
that was a wild time last Wednesday. That was crazy. Okay, well, good to know that the early middle school baseball season is. I don't want to say trending in the right direction, but you're moving in some direction, in some form or fashion. You're moving forward, I guess we could say. Is that safe to say?
It's not a good time to not be healthy.
Yeah. Well, you never look. Strength and conditioning. Who's the strength and conditioning coach?
Gavin.
That's not in the budget.
That's
Gavin
not.
is. Gavin, he's the one who.
I think it's best if we don't get into that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. Well, hey, let's talk some college football, fellas. And I wanted to ask you this as before we get kind of started. I recorded an episode today about a specific SEC team, and we're going to do some more kind of looking at questions in spring and everything. But I wanted to start with you, Ralph, on this, and we can go over to Will. How much stock do you put into spring football in terms of what you can take away from it? That's the question. I thought I was going to do a question, but there you go.
No, it's a pretty simple question, honestly. It's the in some instances, like in I'll use a school for example, like Alabama, having probably the only quarterback battle going into the season, in my opinion. I think the SEC. Between Ty Simpson and Alex Mack. That's the only one you're really paying attention to in spring because you want to see who's probably progressed the best this last year. Who wants his job more, who is going to be you guys who fill in for you guys who left last year. If you're missing, a lot of players, all these schools are missing a lot of big pieces, but they have guys behind them that played a good bit this past season. So, it's just more like, can they transition to the starting role easily, or are there guys that are newcomers transferring in that are stepping into roles that you kind of missed last year? I know Auburn, Mississippi State, Oklahoma has some options or some positions that need to be filled that were there last year, but they were not up to par. I'd say it would be a good word to use. And those guys will be on the radar for are they the guys we got who we think they are in the portal?
Yeah. I think it's interesting to see how new portal pieces fit in the day and age of college football. I did talk about that today because, you go back 5, 6, 7 years. A lot of us would talk about some early enrollees, and even now, compared to what it was then, early enrollees it's like majority of your class is enrolling in January, to where before it was like maybe the big name guys, and now it's almost everybody. And then now, and I'll specifically speak like for LSU, you've got a lot of different new names and new faces that are going to be on the roster. And, for other teams, they've got 30, 40 new guys, including transfers and high school talent. So I think it's an opportunity to look at it that way. Will, for your team, I think there's an intrigue in terms of how the quarterback looks, in spring. Does he look confident? Does he look like he's building a relationship? But are you able to really glean anything other than, okay, he looks good in shorts and on air? Because we're being real, there's no serious pass rush. They're not allowed to hit the quarterback. You can try to simulate stuff as much as you can, but what do you take away from a spring practice and when you watch this and when you look at the footage?
I take away nothing at this point because, anybody could leave. A lot of teams won't have the same team that they had at the start of spring practice after their spring game or whenever they wrap up spring practice. Been many times. Auburn spring game used to be appointment TV for me in April. And, there was a lot of spring game A-Day all-stars that in the fall didn't even get a single snap. So, I don't put a whole lot, very much stock at all into spring football. It's just really, to me, it's especially in this day and age, it's can you keep your team together through spring practice?
Yeah. Well, and two, I'll say this. If I'm Alabama, I'm not featuring anything because I don't want to roll into fall camp with one guy who has some experience in a college program, and Keelan Russell. Like, I want to keep both of those guys, Austin Mack and obviously Simpson. I want to keep both of those guys in the fray until fall camp and let them battle out then to where you really can't transfer, right? And so I think that, like, do you really want to, like you were saying, Will, not put all your cards out there in terms of what other teams can pick up, but put all your cards out there to where the guys inside the locker room are starting to pick up, hey, I'm not going to be on that too deep, so I need to go ahead and get out of town. Like, I'm not going to be the first guy in line when the defensive line needs to rotate out, or I'm not the swing tackle. Like, I think just in terms of that, it was, in my opinion, it's kind of watered down spring football a little bit. I think you have to be really intrigued in your team to understand, hey, there's a position battle at left guard. There's a position battle at defensive end. Like you said, Ralph, like, you kind of have to have an innate ability. When you talk about a 30,000-foot view, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't show anybody anything so I can keep my roster intact. And so we can roll into fall camp and have, full 85 scholarship players to kind of work with instead of trying to supplement in the portal, I would say.
Another one is like, teams that added a new coordinator, new coaches, and getting those fits, getting those connections early on. I mean, they've obviously been doing workouts and probably had team meetings already with players talking about their new offense or defense or new quarterback coach, stuff like that. That's year round stuff. So
yeah.
But like those connections going on field practice will be a more in depth, I guess you'd say, because some of the Reggie, I agree. I'm not prepared for this.
Will, I did want to get one last thing to you. Said you don't take anything away from it. What is something that you will be watching if you do? Like, if you wanted to take something away, what would you hope to get out of spring practice in today's current climate?
I mean, I can only really think of team specific. Like for Auburn, it's who's going to be the quarterback. I mean, is Jackson Arnold, as advertised, or was he just a huge miss by everybody? Being a 5-star, high 4-star coming out of high school, was he just a miss for everybody?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head. It's got to be team specific. Will Ryan says Will can't take anything away because he doesn't know ball. Dub. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. Okay, so how we're doing this tonight is we have our SEC tier rankings. We each have our own, and I actually think that Ralph and I's is nearly identical. Will's has maybe 2 or 3 changes, but it all seems like we kind of have the same flow of how we want to do this. Now, we kept it to 5 tiers. That was kind of our rule of thumb. Now, Ralph, you did tease that potentially our next show tomorrow night, there could be 74 tiers of just different, with how the ACC, or you could have one tier with 47 teams in it.
Look, and there's someone in Discord who agrees with me. There's 3 tiers, and it's just like a elite, good, and just not very good tier.
Not very good. There's 50. What is the money ball? There's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us, and that's.
Well, it's I can't remember. I know what you're talking about though. It's the well crap one.
Yes.
And then there's us.
There's good teams, and then there's bad teams, and then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us.
Yeah, exactly.
We won't talk about who that is in the ACC because we thought that might be Pitt's last year, and they went.
I'll tell you who it is in the West Georgia Dixie baseball.
Oh gosh, well, it's bad general manager from what I've heard. Bad roster management.
They're all in the comments.
There we go. Okay, so here we go.
Yeah, right here.
He got injured by a probe. That's wild. Not safe for work by any means. All right, so let's dive into this. We're talking about our SEC tiers. Here we go. Ralph, you can pull it up, and we will talk through yours first. There it is. Ralph, remember for the audio listeners, because I did get a text about this. Let the people know your tiers, and then we'll run through them.
All right. Tier 1, I had Texas and Georgia. Tier 2 is Ole Miss, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee. Tier 3, LSU, Texas A&M, Missouri, Florida. Tier 4, Auburn, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. And then Tier 5 is Kentucky and Mississippi State. I don't know about Will's, because I don't think I read Will's at all. But I feel like all 3 of our tier 1s are the same, if I'm correct. They're the top 2 teams
Correct.
in the SEC going
Yeah.
into this year. Returning a lot of starters, obviously. Georgia and Texas both are. Very good quarterbacks on both sides. Arch Manning, obviously, one of our top quarterbacks in the SEC. Look, there should be no decision on why we should change the top 2. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think they're 1A, 1B. Tier 2, Ole Miss, Alabama, South Carolina. I feel like Alabama and Tennessee are out there pretty easily. They're 2 of the best teams coming off of last year, who are only going to get better. I feel like. I know Tennessee lost Dylan Sampson, but they're still a solid team. They're a young quarterback who's only going to get better. They're still a good defense year in, year out. I like Tennessee coming in this year. Ole Miss, obviously, you lose Jackson Dart, Trey Harris, some other pieces, but Austin Simmons is the future there. They're excited. I'm excited for Ole Miss this year. I think it's going to be a fun season to watch a new quarterback, new system, really kind of work around him. South Carolina, I told Bryce in the wheel, I said I could switch LSU, South Carolina, go tier 3, tier 2, both sides. They're almost identical in some instances, I think. Very good quarterback play, good receivers, good running backs coming in this year. Bryce kind of taught me down this one to LSU. I don't think they have. I thought they had some pretty elite defenders on coming back this year, but I was wrong. I had to look at some stats.
Ralph, don't be so easily influenced.
No, I had to go look because I thought Ashton Stamps was better. He was okay.
He's okay.
He was good, but he wasn't as good as I thought he was.
He's not a cornerback one in the SEC.
No. Harold Perkins is coming back, but what's he going to be? What position is he going to be? Is he going to be fully healthy? Is he going to be back to what he was beginning of last year? I think Weeks is good. He runs kind of with his head down and just hits you. I don't think he's the best, in coverage linebacker, but we all like a linebacker who just hits hard. This is always fun to watch. That's all I'm going to really say up to. Tier 3, A&M, they should be a tier 2 team easily. But they just disaster of a last year, I think, in my opinion, for what the standards was set at and to where they were. Losing to Auburn was a pitiful game for them. Yeah, honestly. Missouri, they could possibly drop to a tier 4. I have no idea what Bo Prabula is going to do for them. I have no idea.
I don't know. Yeah, it's weird.
And you lost Luther Burden, who is probably one of the best receivers we've seen in the SEC in the last few years. So it's just a big question mark for Missouri, really, for me offensively. And in Florida, Lagway is the future. This is going to be his full season. We hope he stays healthy and proves that other people who say that he's not good makes him a tier 3 team this year. Tier 4 Auburn can move up easily. I truly do. I mean, this team added so much in the all season. Will shakes his head. I know, or he's probably reading comments, honestly. But Auburn has so much potential this year to win 8-9 games. It's on the table for them.
Relax.
Look,
I agree. Yeah,
it's there. It's there on the table for them. Can they do it? I have no idea. Oklahoma, same with Auburn, dude. It truly is. It's possible for 6-7 wins for Oklahoma this year. They have the toughest schedule according to On3 going into the season. And I just don't know how they're going to play. John Batir, new offense coordinator, or John Batir, new quarterback, and a new offense coordinator. Can they be better? I believe so. I think Venables is a good coach no matter what. Vanderbilt's tier 4. They're not going to win 9 games. Their win total is at 4.5. I'd take the over there, win 6 or 7, make a bowl game, and have a fun season. Probably upset somebody again. Arkansas. I don't want to go through every team again. Arkansas is good. I just don't know what's going to happen with them. They're also a big question mark both sides of the ball for me. They lost a lot in the portal. And in Kentucky, Mississippi State, look, both of them were terrible last year. Let's just be honest here. Kentucky was pitiful. They're just downpour of last year. Just couldn't play very well. Mississippi State, they're at the bottom because, look, they had lost so much in the last few years. They had the right coach there. You just got to give them some time to build the program up and just work with it because they went from a great coach, horrible reason that what happened with him. They brought in the interim head coach, did not work out, and then they go and hire someone else. And I think he's the right guy. I think they'll do great in a few years, but it's just going to take some time.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, and we can talk about this when we get to more later, and I think somebody asked the question of it as well, and this is something that is interesting. Johnny says, what about South Carolina losing their offensive coordinator. Dowell Loggins now the head coach at App State, so they replaced it with Mike Shula as the new OC in Columbia. So, I'll say this about South Carolina, and Ralph, ours are nearly identical. I feel we have two changes. I've got South Carolina in tier 3 just because of the OC change, and then you lost a lot on the defensive side of the football, and you saw that in the combine. Like, guys, some freaks. Like the safety they had, is it Nick Iwanori? I don't know how to say his name. That guy is really was a standout both at the Senior Bowl in Mobile and then stood out at the combine this past weekend. But you do have an All-American talent in Dylan Stewart that you re-upped on the NIL front. You've got him to kind of commit for at least one more year. And so you have Lenora Sellers. Funny enough about South Carolina, one of the better teams in the country last year in the red zone. I think you could really point to the fact that Rocket Sanders had a really good year for them. You combine that with Lenora Sellers and his playmaking ability at the quarterback position. But I think that in order for South Carolina, and maybe this is kind of where you're going with this, like if Lenora Sellers takes a massive step, they're dangerous as a passer. Now he's got look, I mean, this has kind of been a debate across the social media sphere here the past couple weeks. Sellers against Lagway, Sellers against whoever you want to put in that category in terms of versus the quarterback. But I think that offensive line play's got to get better for South Carolina. It's way better than it was 2 years ago. It's got to get better than it was last year. And just in general, I think Sellers has to mature as a passer. Yes, he can throw, but in terms of a passer, I think that'll be something interesting to watch there as well. I do want to ask you this, Ralph.
For South Carolina, though, I should have dropped them down in tier 3 because I forgot they have Boaz Stanley starting at the center this year, probably.
Oh,
so
also,
who
exactly?
The transfer from Troy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he was pretty good. He went in the portal, I think, kind of late actually.
Yeah, he was he was there for about, I think he was in the portal like 3 days after the season was officially over, actually. But didn't really announce it, or there wasn't announced that at all, I guess.
So I wanted to ask you this though about the criteria. I think and I don't really have any questions, but I think just Missouri's an interesting case study, a team that could fall definitely this year. And then that's kind of all I have to say. Will, any comments on this one? Because I think yours is more different than mine is.
Yeah, I have some differences, but
you can save it for yours if you want to explain.
I'll save it for mine. But I mean, I don't really have many problems with Ralph's.
Yeah,
his only problem is what I said about Auburn. He's having 8 and 9 wins on the schedule. It's okay.
8. How can a tier 4 team win 8 or 9 games?
It's on the table.
They could do it.
It's on the table.
They could do it.
So could Kentucky and Mississippi State. You got to play the games.
If Mississippi State wins 8 games this year, I will give someone.
We're selling the show. We're selling the show.
I'll give you $100.
I'll eat my hat.
Okay, there we go. Which one? Yeah.
Yeah, I need to know which one.
Who? Which one?
Your Falcons hat.
Which Falcons hat? The red one?
How many do you have?
3.
The red one. That's fine.
Red one.
I can't eat that one. It'll upset my stomach. The material would upset my stomach.
I got you.
Okay. We'll find a random hat one day and just get you to eat it.
No, I like what you're saying. All right, let's go to the next one here. Here's mine. Nearly similar there, Ralph. And mine, just for the audio listeners, I go Texas, Georgia in tier 1. Both of these programs will have essentially quarterbacks that have had limited action start, but I think the promise and obviously of Arch Manning is really, really up there for a lot of people in terms of what he could bring. And I think too is this team is built to win the SEC. They're built to go to the national championship. They've, been to back-to-back semifinals. And I think that when you look at what they have to rebuild, okay, the defensive front has lost a lot over the past 2 years. You also lost, a couple of coaches as well, both Terry Joseph now with the Saints, Blake Gideon now with Georgia Tech. So you've got to replace the back end of the coaching of your defense there as well. So for Texas, I think that they are well equipped in terms of what they have on paper. We got to see how that obviously forms and builds through spring ball. I think that, and we've talked about this a lot, fellas, for Georgia in that 2 spot, a lot of people, and I won't even say a lot of people. There's a portion of people who are, I think, down on Georgia in terms of their offensive line play was not good last year. They've got to get some really big contributions from some younger guys. Gunnar Stockton is obviously there. Ralph, you and I have talked about, we really love, and we've talked with, former Georgia beat writer Palmer Toms about how high the staff is on Ryan Puglisi. So I think that, and just in terms of what you can bring to the table, Georgia still has the talent, right? Like they still got dudes, and they got to replace a lot of guys, but they're kind of in the sphere of where you're like, yeah, the casual fan may not know who, so and so is, but they got guys, and they'll just kind of show themselves as the season goes along. That got them in that tier one. Tier two for me was interesting because I think in this spot you've got two teams, fellas, that have made playoffs, right? And then you've got two other teams that kind of feel like they're on one. I feel like is on the precipice, and another one that is just kind of underachieved. Ole Miss, we've talked about this. This is probably, when you look back on it, going to be really hard to beat in terms of the run that Ole Miss is on in terms of their football history, especially in the modern day of college football. And then LSU. I mean, look, I'll have a whole episode tomorrow detailing it with Blake Ruffino of AYS Sports, but I think LSU has done, we've talked about this, they've done what they need to do on paper. Does it work out? And that's going to be the big key. Like the holes that they had coming out of last season, they've got there. Now they lose Bo Davis. That's a massive loss. They don't really have great options in the interior defensive line, but we'll talk about that. And Ralph, you mentioned obviously, and I've talked about this with Blake, the lack of elite defensive players. It's gone so far from the far cry we saw of the 2010s of LSU defenses, and the guys that just
the elite defensive backs.
Well, I was talking with Blake today about it, and he was listing them off. He was like Jamal Adams, Eric Reed, like you just go down the list, Tyrann Mathieu, all of these guys, Morris Claiborne. You want to keep going back into some of the defensive backs they've had. So they've had elite players. It's just
Major Burns.
Plead the fifth.
There's not a trash can around.
Plead the fifth. So I've got them in tier two based on the fact that they have spent, and on paper the roster makes sense. Now my tier three is South Carolina, Texas A&M, Missouri, Florida. I think this is an interesting tier because I kind of hinted at this with you, Ralph, but I think this is the tier of the SEC that could be the most volatile. I think you could see three of these four teams fall below into tier four this year, or you could see them stay or potentially rise. The three teams I think that could happen to is South Carolina, A&M, and Florida. I don't love what Missouri brings in this season. We saw how they struggled without Cody Schrader. I still think that, it's just interesting with Bo Prabula. What is he really? We don't really know in terms of what he could look like in Drink's offense. And you got a new starting quarterback, and he doesn't have necessarily the weapons that, they've had in previous years. I think the upside, though, for me is South Carolina, the quarterback position, Florida, the quarterback position. We've talked a lot about that with DJ Lagway. And then A&M, in a weird way, we could talk about the quarterback position. They lose some stuff up front, but I still like what they bring to the table. I want to see Marcel Reed as a passer. Yeah, he can throw the deep ball. Yes, he can do certain things, but as a consistent passer, if he develops like that, they could rise there. Tier four, Auburn, Oklahoma, Vandy. You kind of hit the head on that, Ralph. We're talking about those three teams, and we'll obviously let Will talk a little bit more about Auburn here in a second. Oklahoma, like you mentioned, new OC. I mean, Oklahoma's a team that could have a new head coach in November, December. So it's interesting. And then Vandy did some really good things. You get a 47-year-old quarterback and, to come back. And I think that's obviously big for them to get, Diego Pavia back in the fold. I will say this. I don't think they're going to take people by surprise. I think they'll be competitive, but it won't be as the surprising factors that were last year. And then Kentucky, Mississippi State, Arkansas, and by the way, I don't know how you guys did this. I did not do this as like Tennessee's the last team in tier two and South Carolina's like the first team in tier three. This is just straight across the board. But in tier five, so that being said, I don't think Arkansas is the worst team in the SEC. I will say this though. I do think that there could be some legitimate concerns about Kentucky. Like I don't know. I don't think that they're going to be in for a bounce back year in terms of like back to that 7-8 win margin. Like I don't know what their preseason over under to win total is for Kentucky, but I mean, I think they could be fighting for some bowl eligibility just in terms of that. So That's my thoughts on Kentucky. Mississippi State, we'll see what happens with them, and then Arkansas. So that kind of rounds out my bottom three there in tier number 5. So any questions, or we just want to move on to Will's and then kind of discuss some stuff?
Kentucky's at 4.5.
I mean, I think they could. I have to look at the schedule, but I think they could hit the over. But I don't have them going more than 6.
They don't have a quarterback.
It could get ugly.
Auburn's at
They don't have a quarterback.
Will, do they not have a quarterback because he was so bad at Auburn?
He didn't play at Auburn.
When has he been good? When has he been good?
Calzada wasn't terrible at A&M.
He had a good game against Auburn, but Brian Harsin, so it doesn't count.
And Alabama. He beat Alabama.
Rat poison.
Don't say it.
All right, let's move to Will's real quick. The final one of the day, and Will stacks up on tier 3 here, and so walk us through, and it's nearly the same. We'll just say this: tier 5 and tier 4 are the same across the board. Tier 1's the same. You can talk about what you want to talk about.
Yep. So tier 1, Georgia and Texas. Tier 2, Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee. Tier 3, South Carolina, LSU, Texas A&M, Missouri and Florida. Tier 4, Auburn, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. Tier 5, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. Yeah, Bryce, I feel the same way that you do about Texas and Georgia. These are teams that are, I mean, the playoff is the expectation of making it at least to what I guess we'll call it the second round, the quarterfinal is the expectation for both of these programs. And they're built to go there. The only question mark is quarterback. Both programs will have new quarterbacks. I've got Ole Miss in tier 2, even though they are going to have a brand new quarterback, Austin Simmons. I just have a lot of trust in Lane Kiffin to get the most out of his roster. I think he does that better than anybody in the country. He gets the most out of his players, especially on the offensive side of the ball. His scheme, it'll be a different looking scheme this year because Simmons is a different quarterback than Jackson Dart. But I still think it'll be successful. And the defense, man, I've said it time and again that Ole Miss, what Lane Kiffin's doing at Ole Miss, they've done. It's pretty easy to say something that they've never done over there, and a lot of it is how he's overhauled. He and Pete Golding have overhauled the defensive side of the ball. And for me, that's what keeps him in tier 2. Alabama and Tennessee. I think both of these 2 programs, along with Ole Miss, could make the playoff. And that's kind of how I separated them down to tier 3. Till tier 3, it's to me a stretch for these guys to make the playoff. South Carolina, we talked about losing their offensive coordinator. Lenore Sillers does come back. Very interesting choice to go with Mike Shula. But, I think we're forgetting that he was the offensive coordinator for Cam Newton when he won the MVP for the Carolina Panthers. So similar-ish skill sets. Lenore Sellers is not Cam Newton by any stretch of the imagination, but similar style quarterback. So could be interesting. LSU, I've got a ton of questions about their defense. Bryce, I'm gonna have to listen to your episode on LSU because I feel like LSU is gonna have to outscore everybody. Maybe you can give me and the rest of us that don't know ball some more insight on LSU's defense. Missouri, I don't know what to expect. I feel like Missouri is. I like Eli Drinkwitz. I like what he's done there, but I definitely see Missouri taking a step back this year, mostly because of what is going to be quarterback. We keep saying Bo Prabula. Is it going to be Bo Prabula? I don't know. I mean, he showed some flashes for Penn State, but is it going to be him? A lot going on over here right now. Florida, I think, has probably the most upside of any team in this group, namely because of DJ Lagway, what we've talked about. Yeah. Ralph, what's that face for?
I was just reading comments. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Interesting comment went through. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Auburn,
Easy.
Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. I think we're looking at 6 to 8 win teams here. Oklahoma's got to overhaul basically their entire offense and kind of rethink how they do things on that side of the ball completely, because last year was such a disaster, and losing so many pieces. Vanderbilt, they get Diego Pavia back. Somehow Joker's going to play his 12th year of college football, and probably go win another bowl game for Vanderbilt. Do I have to talk about Auburn?
Yes.
Too many question marks. It's going to be a lot of youth on the defensive side for Auburn. I'm just going to have to wait and see who steps up for Auburn, especially in the front seven on the defensive side. The secondary, I feel a lot more comfortable with, but that front seven, replacing a lot of players on the defensive line and the linebacker positions. So Auburn's going to be going with redshirt freshmen and sophomores at a lot of those positions to get the bulk of those snaps. They're going to be baptism by fire for Auburn on the defensive side. Offensively, should be a lot better. I mean, if it's Jackson Arnold, dare I say it, if it's Ashton Daniels at quarterback, if it's Deuce Knight, just need somebody to kind of stabilize the position. The talent is there. It's the best offensive line Hugh Freeze has had. It's probably the best offensive line, at least on paper, Auburn's had since probably 2019. And the skill positions, I mean, the wide receiver room, it might be the best in the SEC. You just got to have a guy that can get the ball to him. Tier 5, pretty ugly. And there's Gavin. Yep, Dylan Gentry, the secret weapon of Auburn's offense.
Well, he's been unleashed, just not on the football field, elsewhere.
Yeah. Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Arkansas down in Tier 5. I just said it about Kentucky. Zach Calzada, I'm not moved with that addition for Kentucky. Mississippi State, I like Jeff Lebby. I like what he's done a lot. I like the way that his team played last year for him, but I still think they're 3, maybe 4 years away from seriously competing for postseason. And Arkansas, Sam Pittman, right man at the right spot. It's just been a struggle. Taylon Green coming back. I love Taylon Green. Question is, what does he have around him? Bobby Petrino can scheme it up, so they'll probably put up some points. But on the, you look at the other side of the ball, can they stop anybody? That kind of hurt them a lot at times last year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll reserve for the LSU stuff for tomorrow when we publish this episode. But the question marks defensively are definitely there. I feel like, guys, we've kind of been so different on our rankings. This is kind of the first time where it's pretty much all that makes pretty good sense in terms of those tiers. So to run back through Will's real quick: Tier 1, Texas and Georgia; Tier 2, Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee; Tier 3, South Carolina, LSU, A&M, Missouri, Florida. Which that's a crowded group. I think that Tier 3, the middle pack of the SEC, is huge. I think just in terms of the movement. Auburn, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. I feel like, guys, we all 4 had that one just about. And then all 3 of us. There's not a 4th person unless I'm seeing Ghost. Tier 5 is Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. Gavin said nobody going to mention A&M portal addition in the offseason of Micah Riley. Reggie did have a question for you, Will. He wants to know, is Singleton, former Georgia Tech receiver and one of the hottest receivers in the portal, is he better than Coleman, or are they just different players?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, on the attractiveness scale of the ability of his ability on the field. It's sexy, the way he plays football. No, seriously. I don't want to answer you. I kind of think they're different players, but
I think they're very different players. I think Singleton is more of like your track star. When you think about a receiver, call him a track star, a guy that's he's gonna get your swing passes, screen passes, jet sweeps, go balls, try to get behind the defense. I think he's that kind of player. Cam Coleman is, a guy that you're throwing 50-50 balls to, because he's what, 6'3", 6'4". We saw him at times last year just go up over corners and just moss them. I mean, it's the best way to put it. He had a couple mosses last year. He's just a guy that can go up and get the football, and it's a guy at the wide receiver position that Auburn has seldom had. In my lifetime, the last 27 years. I think they're totally different players. We've seen the Eric Singleton type player at Auburn a lot, especially since 2013's Gus Malzahn's time at Auburn. A lot of those smaller, faster, quicker guys, and to me, they're just two totally different players. They're going to be fun to watch if Auburn can find a quarterback in that room that can get them the ball.
Reggie just says this too, and I was actually looking something up. He goes, I like the combo. I think they could play off of each other pretty well, and I think that's something for Auburn. Like you could get if you can find a quarterback. Like you said, it doesn't have to be crazy, right? And we talked about this when we did the quarterbacks. You just need a point guard. It doesn't have to be insane, and especially with the way that Hugh Freeze is known for his offense, you don't need some type of big cannon out there slinging the ball, from opposite hash to the other sideline. Like you just need a guy that can play point guard and make the right decisions.
He had a lot of success with Bo Wallace as his quarterback.
And Bo Wallace is certifiably insane, but yes,
he was a really good quarterback, but he didn't have the intangibles. He didn't have the arm strength. Didn't really have anything that jumps off the page.
Yeah.
As at the quarterback position, he was just solid.
Yeah.
You also have Horatio Fields at Auburn too, who kind of goes under the radar for a good pickup for them this year.
I don't think I don't know much about Horatio Fields. I don't think he's going to be as good as Keandre Lambert-Smith was.
No, but two different receivers.
Solid.
He's a 6'3", 205 receiver. He's going to be a kind of big body guy.
Horatio's there to bring the GPA up.
Well,
I don't know. He played at Wake Forest. I didn't watch a single Wake Forest game. I don't know.
You will this year, though, won't you?
Anything about Horatio? Why?
Legendary Auburn quarterback starting for.
Oh God, yeah. There's a reason we didn't go that far down in the rankings, Ralph.
We don't talk about people that don't love Auburn.
I like it. All right, so that's our SEC tier rankings. There obviously can be some movement, fellas. And Johnny asked a good question. Who is y'all's, I will say, way too early SEC championship matchup? Now, we're going to dive more into this in post-spring once we get a better feel of some things. And, we steal content from other people that we can read and stuff like that. So to form our opinions, way too early SEC championship matchup. I'm going to hold off on that. I do want to ask you guys this. Who is somebody that, well, let's see this. Let's go to our friends over at Bet Online. What are the way too early odds for the SEC championship? Let's see if we can find. I want to find this real quick. I'm looking. I don't know if you guys.
Georgia, Texas, easily number 1 and 2.
So we go NCAA football futures. Did you find it, Ralph?
I was looking. Sorry, I thought you were doing this.
I got it here. No worries. Okay, so NC conference futures. So here we go. In the SEC, are you guys ready for this? Texas is plus 200.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia plus 275.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee plus 600. Alabama plus 600. LSU plus 800. Ole Miss plus 1,000. Auburn's most 2,800, just in case you're wondering, Will. Who's a team that's not in that top 5 that you're like, hey, things break right, they could find themselves in Atlanta. So we'll end it with that. Who's kind of a dark horse team to maybe make the SEC championship this year? So I'll read off those top 5. It cannot be any of these top 5. Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, LSU. We'll go 6 with Ole Miss because that's all the odds kind of under 1,000. So who wants to go first with that?
I can, and I was going to use one, but now I can't use it because I looked at their schedule and it's not in their favor this year. It wasn't in their favor last year. I'll say South Carolina if everything goes right this year. You get Alabama at home this year. Obviously, you're playing LSU on the road, A&M on the road. But I feel like you have a solid chance to perform well on the road in those stadiums. If you perform well at Alabama this past year,
Mm-hmm.
when you were favored, you were down. I think you were a 12, 14-point underdog in that game and only lost by 2. With the additions they had in the transfer portal, with the guys coming back offensively and defensively, if things go right, they stay healthy, they're a team that could be a dark horse. I was going to use Florida, but their schedule is not very favorable for them to go undefeated, honestly.
I think South Carolina's schedule is pretty hard on the back end, to be honest with you, too. Like
my thing about Florida's is they got to play at LSU, at Miami, back-to-back weeks, and then you get a bye week. You got Texas at A&M, and then you go Mississippi State bye week, and then you got Georgia at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida State.
Yeah, that's going to be hard to get to Atlanta.
It's the hard. I'm not going to say it's a shocking game, but they play South Florida week 2. You know, one of those teams that could just catch you on a bad day. Possibly.
Will, who's your team outside that plus 1,000 odds?
Please say Auburn. Do us all a favor. Say it.
I forgot who they were.
Kentucky.
You mean to read the odds again?
Yeah, read them again for me. I forgot what they were.
All right, so we're doing you got to be outside the
12,000.
top 6. So you have Texas plus 200, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss. They're all within the plus 1,000 odds to win the conference championship. I'm just talking about a team that could get there. So that kind of makes a difference. So outside of those 6 teams, who are you rocking with? I'll tell you this: the next best 3 odds to win it: A&M, South Carolina, and Auburn.
I'm going full homer. Auburn.
Thank God.
Auburn.
Yes.
I think
We needed this.
the mass improvements to the offensive line, stabilizing at quarterback. We already talked about the receiver room. Again, I think the question is going to be the front 7 for Auburn. Keldrick Faulk comes back. That's a huge piece for Auburn. Going to be the primary pass rusher. But outside of that, it's a lot of guys that haven't played a ton in that front 7. So, maybe Auburn can, new quarterback, better offensive line. Maybe they can just outscore everybody. Who knows? And I mean, I talk about the front 7, but it's really like who can get to the quarterback. I mean, the SEC has become a big passing league, kind of like everybody else. It's documented. It's been a while since I've said something positive. It's like Johnny's saying the schedule isn't crazy. It's really not.
Georgia and Alabama at home.
Georgia and Alabama at home. That's huge. What's the toughest road game will be Texas A&M. Have to go on the road to Oklahoma. I mean, it's
got to go to Vandy this year too. Don't worry.
Well, Auburn will be 11-1 with a loss to Vanderbilt because Hugh Freeze can't beat Diego Pavia. He can't crack Diego. Can't crack that code. But no, I mean it's exciting
crazy.
times.
It's not crazy to say it, Will. It really is.
Well,
okay.
I went to go look at the schedule, okay? And we're talking about just getting to the SEC championship. Per Bet Online, to win it outright is plus, what was it? What did I say again?
Plus
3,800?
28.
Is that what I said?
280.
Yes. Plus 2,800. Right. The schedule lines up like this to where you could theoretically, and God, we're going to get Will just too excited about all this. Will, I do believe there's a chance you could roll into College Station on September 27th undefeated. That would require you going on the road to beat Baylor, which would be a good statement win to start off, the season.
Won't happen. Walker White's there.
He's not playing this year, Will. Get over it. He's not going to play.
You got to go. Well, listen. You got Ball State.
He'll run out with the freshman. Okay.
You got.
That's what he's going to do. He'll do the
You got
freshman
Ball
run
State.
with fans.
You play at home against South Alabama.
Won't play Troy.
Then you go on the road at Oklahoma, which could be interesting. But I think too the upside could be you get them so early in the year that maybe. I mean, I would say maybe Mateer's not antiquated, but he's his old OC, so it doesn't really matter. So I think you could go into College Station undefeated. Now, if you pass that test, right, you got to play Georgia at home. Even if you lose that game, the back half of your schedule is Missouri at home, at Arkansas, home against Kentucky, at Vanderbilt. Between your bye weeks, if Auburn can find a way to go 4-1, I think they got a legitimate shot to go to Atlanta.
November 22nd is a toss-up game now.
Yeah, toss-up game. Fighting Bears of Mercer. Top
Mercer.
defense in the FCS last year. No, but in all seriousness, I do think within the
Joke
bye week,
around. Last time Mercer went there, they tried to win.
Yeah, but TJ Finley was playing quarterback. Let's be
TJ Finley
honest.
threw 2 picks, and I was in the radio booth just losing my mind. I was like, this is ridiculous. This guy's terrible.
Hey, I remember the coach said Auburn did a great job after the lightning delay. That's when everybody knew. The standard.
When Auburn came back after that lightning delay and they were playing swag surfing with 47 people in the stands and they act like they had just won the national championship after beating Mercer, I was like, this is a problem. This is a problem. So I don't hate it, Will, and I'll be tempted with you. I was tempted to go there because I do think, I think I just don't, I'm not going to count Jackson Arnold out as an Auburn Tiger on March the 5th. I'm not going to do it. I think the talent is there. Can they realize it? We'll see. Now, you've got Auburn at plus 2,800. Ralph, you took South Carolina at plus 2,200. I'm going to go with that 4th place team. It would not shock me to see Texas A&M in Atlanta. I think they could find a way to do it. Odds are plus 1,600 to win the whole thing. But I do like Texas A&M as a team that could maybe sneak their way into an opportunity in Atlanta. And a reason being, and I'll say this, is because even with everything last year, fellas, they kind of collapsed. Yeah, they did. But even with everything last year, they rolled into the month of October undefeated in SEC play. Like, they had a chance to go and do some damage. Now, obviously, the back half of their schedule was different. But here's the thing. You look at the schedule, how it lines up. UTSA, Utah State, at Notre Dame. I'm not even worried about Notre Dame because we're talking about conference. You host Auburn, okay? You host Mississippi State, you host Florida. You go to Arkansas. Really, your first real road test is going to be October 25th at LSU. Historically, in that rivalry, whatever you want to call it, the home team wins. Even if you drop that, you still have Missouri, South Carolina, and Texas. If they can end the season with 2 conference losses, guys, we saw like in October, there was some crazy 8-way tie, right? Remember, like it was ridiculous that could have happened. If they could go 9-3, 6-2 in conference, it's not crazy. And I think that's kind of the criteria we're all thinking here. Like you could still lose a non-conference game. You could drop maybe one one conference game, and maybe you could find your way in there. But I think
are they playing the Arkansas A&M game back on home fields again? They're not playing in Dallas anymore, are they?
This game will be in Fayetteville. Yes, on October 18th.
That has been the most annoying.
Or will it be in Little Rock?
No, it's in Fayetteville.
Do they play there anymore? I mean, I know it's
No.
like the running
Oh,
joke. I don't even know if
Not
they did.
anymore.
What is?
That's where, no, that ended a long time ago. I think, or about 6-7 years ago. Something like that.
I couldn't tell you. I just wouldn't feel right about it. But no, I think it'll be interesting. That's our SEC tiers, though, fellas. And
A&M does play Stanford though, November 22nd. So 2 big SoCon matchups on November.
Yeah, watch out, Maxwell.
Maxwell's going to be there. I heard.
Oh, there's our friend. We had to get it in here. Our boy TriStar, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia Tech, Florida, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Florida State. TriStar never misses. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Hope you are doing so well. Rough 'em. I didn't know that was a thing for Sanford, but apparently it is. Is Buckyball alive and well? Can't wait for the SoCon tournament. All right. Hey, we appreciate everyone tuning in and watching live here on the YouTube channel and all over Twitter as well. The app formerly known as Twitter, now called X. I don't want to call it that. It sounds weird. But we do appreciate you watching. And we do appreciate you hanging out with us in the live chat. A lively live chat tonight. Now, we like it like that. It's fun. It makes it hard to concentrate, but it is what it is. It's a lot of fun. Tomorrow night, we're going to be live, same time, same place, ACC tiers. And fellas, we're going to have to really think about this. Zach Tustin says subscribe, and cannot wait to see you tomorrow night, same time, same place. Ralph Leary, Will Manis, my name is Bryce Koon. Thanks so much for watching tonight's episode of The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.